Welcome back to Menopause Mastery. So, today I am talking to Julie Olson. She's a dear friend of mine. She's a triple certified nutritionist and functional medicine expert. She's been named the top 23 experts to watch in health and wellness space by the Los Angeles Tribune. And she's also the host of Healthy Body, Healthy Hair, The Truth About Hair Loss Summit. And she is the winner of a Top Talents book publishing contest with the Healthy Hair Fix program. And so Julie is a really skilled investigator that has really dove into the not only chronic symptoms of hair loss and chronic causes, of which there are 73 that she's identified, but she has created a 5-step process and a 5-area root cause analysis to help you understand why you're losing your hair, what's really at cause, and then how to fix it, not just how to band-aid it. And so today we went into some really important subject matters like the role of gut health and microbiome health, particularly in the gut and on your skin. Yep, we got little bugs up there too. And we also went into what's going on with digestion and assimilation, things like toxicity, and we touched on hair loss with hormones, but we really dug into these other areas that are often misunderstood. And we talked a little bit about supplements and what you may be doing wrong with your supplements when you're trying to grow your hair back. So join me now on Menopause Mastery, where I talk to Julie about the 5 things you need to know about your hair loss. All right, everybody, welcome back to Menopause Mastery. So my friend Julie, Julie, how long have we known each other?
Probably 5 or 6
Oh.
years. You're one of my favorites for sure in this community. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you. So we have, I would say that we have a sisterhood here that we have a sisterhood and a membership to a tribe that we don't want to be in. Right. And it's the women who have history of and ongoing, related hair dysfunction. I'm going to call it dysfunction because we're prone to hair loss. And so we're going to get into the hair loss conversation today because that is your expertise. But I'd love to hear, how this one became your biggie, right? Like the hill I'm going to die on is helping women with more hormone related hair loss.
yeah, so I was helping with all sorts of different conditions. I worked in different practices. Been doing this now 14, 15 years. And when I opened my own practice, I realized these women came in just like I used to be a hot mess, but their biggest complaint was hair loss. And before I got into the industry, my hair started falling out in clumps. I mean, it was really, really bad. So I decided to restructure and specialize in female hair loss. And it's not a disease, but it's a definite red flag. And it can be a gift because it usually is an indication that something is out of balance in your body. And it was a gift to me because I honestly, maybe it's superficial, but I probably wouldn't have paid attention to my health and even quit my corporate job and got into nutrition and functional medicine if my hair hadn't fallen out, like majorly fallen out. So I just want to pass on that gift and keep it growing.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been very, very open and honest about I kind of joke that my hair is sort of the litmus test of what's going on in my body and especially I've got some genetic risk for, hormone related, particularly menopause related hair loss. But you actually identified 73 causes of hair loss and you have them put together in your own kind of framework. So I'd love to talk about that because I think women think, oh, it's a nutrient deficiency or it's a hormonal thing or it's this, but there's so many other contributing factors. And just like everything else in functional medicine, it's never just one
It's
thing. Ever,
never one
ever,
cause,
ever.
and there's overlap. So mine do overlap, but it's important that I thought it was important to put them in these 5 functional root cause categories. So one is digestive, which includes nutrition, gut health. So and there's not number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I'm just counting them out. 2 is hormonal, and as we know, and we can go into it more, but our hormones are created in our gut anyway. So you can see these are going to overlap. 3, stress induced. And again, that can, if you're stressed, if you're constantly in the fight or flight, you're not going to absorb your nutrients. So overlap, um, hormonal toxins, toxic overload, and inflammatory chronic inflammation. So yeah, I mean, they all have overlap, but it's important to, you know, put out the fire with all of them, or it's like you're not going to get your hair to grow.
True. Or it'll grow and then it'll fall
Right,
right back
right,
out. We see a lot of that. Like
right,
it gives up the ghost halfway down,
right.
or whatever. So let's double back. Let's talk about some of the big sort of the big overarching items in digestion that people may not be aware of that might really be contributing. Like you and I before we got on the conversation started talking about our gut bugs and things like that. What are the things that people really need to hear about their hair and their gut?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is we have this gut microbiome where it's like 80% of our immune system. But they've discovered a scalp microbiome. And it's not as important as the gut per se, but the thing is, it requires an enormous amount of energy, not only in nutrients, but in ATP, mitochondria health. And since it's not a vital organ, it's going to get the last of the love. So when something else is compromised in your body or system, or you're stressed, or any of these other things, your hair is going to suffer. It's just and that's good because it's keeping us alive. It's prioritizing your other organs, but um there's so many intricacies in not only our gut microbiome, but um our scalp hair follicles also need those nutrients circulating up there. And people have become so sedentary, and so they're not getting that circulation. And then we talked about earlier too, they're not getting that quality protein. Our hair's made out of keratin. And also that the antioxidants. So you think, going on a ketogenic diet might be a good idea. No, that's a really bad idea for hair growth because you need those antioxidants too. And you need those quality essential and non-essential amino acids to absorb. So it goes back to stress. Um, if you're constantly in the fight or flight, which I probably was before I got into this industry,
Mhm.
it was go, go, go. And I think you probably were too, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
But
definitely.
these women, just in general, our society, I mean, they are not putting down their cell phone. They're staying up late. They're watching. There's no way that you can digest and absorb those nutrients. And then if you're not prioritizing your nutrients, getting in not only the healthy quality proteins, but you need those fats for your hair, your scalp, and you need those vitamins and minerals, antioxidants that you can't get from, you know, being on the go. Even I mean, I have women come to me that have had hair transplants. It's crazy.
Yep.
They've tried everything under the sun, and it's not their fault because of all the marketing. I mean, they've tried PRP, they've tried Rogaine, they've tried spirolactin, finasteride, you name it. And they've had a little bit of success short term, but they somehow they found me. And I like when I start peeling back the layers and doing labs, they're not absorbing. They're not absorbing
Yeah.
the nutrients. And then you go deeper and you find candida, or all the dysbiosis is incredible. And then the stress, and then of course, how are their hormones going to be managed? um Anyway, and then like we talked about earlier, um the as far as menopause, there's this estrobilome, refers to the collection of bacteria in your gut that plays a crucial role in processing and modulating estrogen. So in menopause, you lose estrogen and progesterone, which is going to thin your hair. So that's why it's important to get all these other imbalances, that the five root cause categories I talked about in order to move on. I mean, you're the professional in menopause.
No, you're right. I mean, it's so important, like, so, I always think about it when because you brought up the PRP, red light or laser or, topical treatments like Rogaine and all these things. They are a very conventional way of looking at hair loss is the symptom. I need to suppress the symptom by doing something that affects the symptom itself, but hair loss is the canary in the cage, and it really is that there's things out of balance. And it doesn't matter whether you're taking nutrients or other things. If your gut isn't working, you're not going to be able to digest, assimilate, and absorb those nutrients. I think, and I think it's interesting that we're starting to really look at the microbiome in the scalp, right? So, because what we know, so we have a lot more data about the vaginal microbiome and its relationship with the gut microbiome, but they go in tandem, even though ne'er do the two meet, right? So there's no meeting points in the body where those two hang out together, but their proximity and their relationship with the human body. And I would argue that it's the human body as the garden creates an environment for healthy microbes in both places, and then therefore the scalp, or unhealthy microbes in all places, including the mouth. Our dental friends would be like, "Oh yeah, there's all kinds of messy stuff going on in there too." And they have more to do with our health than probably a lot of the things that we think have to do with our health. Um, you know, so really focusing like you do on the digestion gets to the real root cause, right? The hair is the canary in the cage. The real root cause is lack of nutrition, lack of digestion capacity, and then lack of bacteria producing the right enzymes and other things, or some funky bacteria and yeast and other things that don't need to be in there,
Right.
for our technical terms. Funky
Yeah.
guys, they don't need to be there. And I think that's where Western medicine just misses the point, because they just want to apply something. And let's face it, doing laser and transplant and PRP makes a ton of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. Don't even get me started down that. It's gonna be
Yeah,
in
it's
my
aesthetics,
book,
right?
because it's not these women's fault. And the
No.
definition of hair loss and hair thinning is not regulated. So really they're not doing anything wrong by manipulating their studies and claims. So it's not your fault. So that's why this information is important. And um yeah, I I I'm very passionate about that because when it happened to me, I went to a bazillion practitioners, and they said the same thing that, they say to a lot of these women, "Well, yeah, you can get on lifelong drugs like Rogaine, but when you stop it, your hair will all fall out, or you can get on, XYZ or do this or that," and it's just way back then, I didn't even know anything about nutrition or anything, but it didn't sit well with me. I knew there had to be a better way.
Yeah.
And, um, and then going into our fast-paced lifestyle, I mean, I was running around like I worked at Warner Brothers and media research. I mean, I was and so that plays into your recent podcast on cortisol, managing cortisol, because that
Yeah.
is gonna affect your hair follicles. It causes that chronic
Oh,
systemic
yeah.
inflammation, and your hair is gonna fall out because your hair follicles can't sustain when they're chronically inflamed. And you can't always see it because it's inside. It's not topically on the head, at first.
Yeah.
And then that can
Yeah.
lead to, like alopecia areata, the autoimmune type of, hair loss. And that podcast you did on cortisol is so brilliant because I think it really touches so many women's life right now. I mean, going through menopause is hard enough.
Right. Well, what's interesting is I can look back, like, when so this is, so I explained I love telling stories about my husband and I. So when I met my husband, there was a whole bunch of conversations, one of which is I don't do domestic. Like, if you're looking for the domestic worker that's gonna be home, I was like, "That's just not what I'm really driven to
Yeah.
do, cooking and cleaning and, laundry and stuff like that." I just that just doesn't bring me joy. So if I can not do it or hire out, I'm gonna be excited. And he was like, "Cool. I like that." But one of the other statements I made to him was, you could tell the amount of stress in my life. This was literally like 25 years ago, almost 26, by the size of my ass and the thickness of my hair. Right, because I had already noticed that I would get diffuse hair loss all over, like, it would just start
Yes.
coming out, and it wasn't just, on the crown, but it was a little bit
Yeah.
everywhere, so all of a sudden the hair looked a lot thinner, and I saw more in the brush, but it wasn't like I got it right here, at the
Yeah.
widow's peak and things like that. So I think a lot of women experience periodic hair loss due to cortisol, and then when you add that on top to the menopausal hair loss, first and foremost, actually by the decline of testosterone, because everybody thinks testosterone causes hair loss. It does if it makes DHT, but it can also be at cause when it's low for hair loss in
Yes.
women. But then when you couple it with the loss of progesterone and estrogen, it's like it's a double whammy. All of a sudden, you're just like, I can use a orthodontic rubber band for my hair, for my
Yeah.
ponytail. You know, it's true because hormones play a role. So let's talk a little bit about the inflammatory activities of hair loss too at the follicle, because I don't think people realize that it's an inflammatory condition. Like what's really going on the
Yeah,
scalp?
yeah. Well, and just to add to what you just said about DHT, so DHT can get elevated. I've come across some studies just like drinking too much coffee. So it goes hand in hand with cortisol and just being um in the fight or flight constantly and just thinking that's the way you need to live your life. It has a just a roundabout effect. Um yeah, um so going into the chronic inflammation. So this played a role in the COVID shed, we can call it that now, because part of COVID was inflammatory. So what happens is when you have the systemic chronic inflammation, which you usually don't know about, unless it's skin related, then it's kind of obvious. But you have this silent chronic inflammation that can cause all sorts of things, even um, plays a role in like celiac disease and malabsorption. But there's a couple of phases of hair growth. It prematurely puts you into the resting phase of hair growth. That's the telogen effluvium. That's why they call the COVID
Mhm.
shed chronic telogen effluvium. But it's happening day after day. I mean, it's like 50-60% of women worldwide now are having major hair loss. That's up way from what it was before, 20-30%. But now with the worldwide chronic stress and chronic inflammation and the consumption of toxins and not absorbing I mean, it just goes on and on. But that is the actual mechanism of the chronic inflammation is that boom, it just pops you into that telogen effluvium resting phase of hair, so your hair's not gonna grow.
It's interesting. I think I told you this a while back, because we test a lot for hormones and dihydrotestosterone, DHT, which amplifies in male and female pattern baldness. And it goes up in all women in menopause. So even if you're not prone to male pattern baldness or female pattern baldness, DHT relative to all those other hormones goes up. But I kept seeing where it wasn't necessarily high in the serum. It wasn't necessarily high in the urine. However, the hair loss was equally the same. And I think what we really see is probably an amplification during an inflammatory condition of the activity of DHT at the surface of the scalp that causes the hair to fall out and then stay in that dormancy phase. It's just hard to test
Right.
for. But one of the things that no one ever looks at is the enzyme that
The
makes
5A
DHT
reductase,
also
yeah.
yeah, it metabolizes cortisol into alpha THF cortisol. So a somewhat favorable pathway if it's balanced among the different metabolized cortisols. And so, it's we look at all those things, and if you add kind of obesity and toxicity to it, that pathway gets pretty amplified. And so I think that women need to understand that it's not just as simple as taking Rogaine or going online. Like Instagram is filled, maybe it's because I talk about my hair, filled with ads about these topical applications. And there are some that are not drug related, but most of them are drug related, which minoxidil or whatever, you take it, it grows. And then as soon as you stop it, it all falls out and even more.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, and it's a much more complex interplay than just a DHT blocking topical,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm curious, what do you think about like some of the shampoos and things that might do a little bit of that blocking of DHT naturally with natural ingredients, obviously rather than medications. Do you use those with your clients as well as you're fixing the gut and taking care of all the inflammatory
I don't
activity?
I don't I don't recommend them. I have a few on my website that I'd like, but again,
Mhm.
it's not sure, it can
It's
help,
not
but
the
it's
end all
not
be
the end
all.
all do all. It's a whole complex process. Like, it's just not it's if it was easy as taking a supplement or using a certain shampoo or putting on a serum, then no one would have problems with hair loss. You know? Yeah, and then yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Ladies, if you're noticing more fine lines and wrinkles, it's not just about aging, it's about the loss of estrogen. And that affects our skin structure, making it drier, thinner, less firm. But here's the great news: I've created Biased Mastery Cream to help. This luxurious bioidentical estrogen cream supports your natural hydration and elasticity. It's packed with nourishing oils like olive, jojoba, aloe, and coconut, so it feels amazing and helps soften those lines and bring back that healthy glow. I've been using it, and let me tell you, my skin has never looked or felt better. It's smoother, more radiant, and those little cracks and creases are way less noticeable. If you're ready to give your skin some extra love, check out By Est Mastery on the Metabolic Blueprint website. And that's metabolicblueprint.com/by est mastery. That's BIEST mastery, MASTERY. And your face will thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's because 'cause we're always looking for that one thing. It's like, "Oh, I'll just put this topical on, and then I'll just run about go about my day and do some other things." So I'm curious, so obviously a lot of the women you work with have these 5 there's 5 root cause categories. They got something going on in all of those, and they're probably all perimenopause to
Mhm.
menopause. So we're gonna go ahead and say you're probably perimenopause, menopausal, have had a lot of stress for a long period of time. What other conditions do you often see kind of comorbid to this that sort of are along for the ride that might help women? Because what I would love to do is prevent the hair loss. Because as somebody with very slow growing and thin and fine hair, if I go through a shedding, we're looking at a 5-year event to get my hair to get anywhere close to where it was. So I would love to help women kind of look at their own body and health and go, okay, what other things should I be looking for that might be signs I'm headed toward a shed? Oh, there we go. I'm headed toward a
Yeah, yeah. I
shed.
mean, have just being tired, just normal symptoms, not feeling well. But and then really taking a toll of what products you're using on your hair, your skin, you're putting in your mouth. The xenoestrogens are especially in this country, they're playing a havoc role on our hormones and hair. And going back to, yeah, you need to use clean products on your hair. Um, and it also goes back to the gut because if you have a toxic overload, and I'm finding that in a lot of these women too, I test them like you have or they have mercury toxicity or major huge toxic overload, and they don't understand. They still have a hard time putting this together. What does that have to do with my hair? And
Right.
it's really taking stock of what's in not only your refrigerator, but your environment. Do you have some mold? Are you living next to a highway? Are you, um, there's so many things now they're starting to discover that we've been living with day in, day out that you need to get better managed. And it's going to positively affect your health and hair. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, in menopause, perimenopause, you're, you're already struggling enough. And if you throw in those on top of it, it just makes it that much harder. Um, there's, cook. I mean,
Yeah. Cook food.
there's so many people that have come to me through the years and they think they're eating, good, healthy takeout food or what have you. But at the end of the day, y- it's still going to have those toxic oils usually, like the seed
Mhm.
oils, which now is coming to light, that's going to cause systemic chronic inflammation. They're going to be high in sodium. And, when you do cook, just double, triple your recipe so you have some left over for lunch or you could freeze or every single time. I mean,
Oh, I'd starve to death if I didn't have leftovers. Would literally starve. That's like well, and I could say after 20 years of practice and tens of thousands of patients, the people that use the discipline to kind of cook up and get some things prepared so they have their basics kind of underway and then often reheat are the ones that are most successful in maintaining healthy diet and lifestyle changes because none of us have I mean this it's going to sound somewhat sexist and obnoxious but I'm like all of us could use a Donna Reed. Like we all need a rent a wife that's at home, and I'm
yeah,
using wife in air quotes, that's home cooking
yeah,
for us like the
yeah,
1950s, but we don't have that. That's not real
right.
anymore. And so we have to find ways around it. And a big part of it is learning how to food prep and then get things done so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Because I wouldn't either. I'm going to be real honest. I'm a busy woman and nutrition expert at the same time, but I am not somebody that wants to spend 3 hours a night in that because I'd eat at 10 o'clock. I get home at 7 if I'm lucky. Right. So it's like, okay, so I can't do that. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves about those things. I want to circle back and talk a little bit about so we've identified those five causes,
5 root cause
the
categories, yeah.
digestive, yeah, the digestion, the energy production, inflammation, hormones,
Stress.
stress and infections, like all of those. And I think what we honestly see is that it's a multifaceted approach and that you can't just take like a supplement. So I want to just barely touch on this because I think it's important because a lot of times people, we've got a lot of people marketing, supplements that this is going to be the end all be all or that it's a particular nutrient deficiency like one or two when it really is this root cause. So what is your take on a lot of these supplements that are designed to help with hair growth, particularly when somebody hasn't gone to that extra understanding of are the nutrients in the supplement actually deficient?
Well, first of all, until you get your body to the point where it's absorbing, they're a complete waste of time and money, to be really blunt.
Yeah,
I mean,
I okay. I tell people that all the
I
time.
have people coming to me bagfuls of supplements, and they can actually go against you too. You can take too much biotin. I mean, and that's even a water soluble nutrient. I'm doing a abstract on it right now, but it can cause a lot of problems, not only for skewing test results, but it can disrupt our kidney function, our skin health, and I mean, the list goes on and on. Um, but
Well, oh, and I wanna add
yeah,
something to that. So biotin and alpha lipoic acid in this on the membrane of the
uh-huh.
mitochondria, cellular membranes, they compete with each other. So if you're taking some gigantic dose, 7,000 or some crazy 3,000, all those ones that you see, you may be displacing one of your major ingredients for antioxidant productions for glutathione on just by taking something. So much of what people don't understand is nature has created sort of this balance between the real things we should be getting in nature. And yes, our foods are deficient compared to what they were 200 years ago, but never before in man's history could we get 3,000 or 7,000 of biotin in a natural food.
Yeah,
Like, there's just no effing way.
no, no, and it's a yin yang for a lot of nutrients. That's why it's important to eat meals because food works together synergistically. Even like zinc and copper compete. You have to have a nice
Yep.
balance with that. There's all sorts of nutrients. Um, and a lot of ADE. I'm talking to a nutritionist here. I'm a PhD in nutrition,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
ADEK people don't realize. Sure, those are fat soluble, but then alpha lipoic acid, CoQ10, um, curcumin, those are fat soluble.
Mhm.
So people have been taking them and like, well, it's not helping. Well, when are you taking them? Are you taking them with food, with a healthy fat? And that's why some of these
Mhm.
supplements are now liposomal. So when you take it, it's with a healthy fat. But at the end of the day, our body doesn't, there's supplements there. Our body they're still foreign. It's not what our body's made to have a bazillion supplements. We've got to get things into balance so we can absorb the nutrients we're consuming. And then, yeah, supplements can help us get over the bridge, but it's not like you can have a supplemental diet and expect to be healthy.
No, it's so, so true. It's so, so true. It's so, so true. So tell me, if you were to give some very sort of high overview things, if a woman's listening to this today and they're like, "Okay, I just wanna make some maybe small changes that I can make." Can you give them, like, your top 3 or 4 things, like, that they could do on their own that they're like, "Okay, here's some things I can implement today that I can either stave off the hair loss I'm experiencing or maybe encourage those little follicles to grow again." What could they
Yeah.
do?
So, well, cook, but focus on getting more protein at every meal. And animal protein is more encompassing. I know there's a lot of vegans and vegetarians out there, but still animal protein, you're going to get more bang for your buck. Um so that, but don't neglect the the vegetables. I would say vegetables over fruit just because they still have the same vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. And then the healthy fat, because it all goes together. And that's, if you eat that way every time, then your blood sugar is not going to spike. So elevated blood sugar that's all over the place, it's also going to cause that chronic inflammation that's going to affect your hair follicles. So I guess that's a long number one.
No, no, that's okay, but no, I think it's really important, and I wanna touch on, the protein thing because this is what I hear. So I have a lot of vegan and vegetarian patients, and I'm like, "Look, could you do it with that? But man, you gotta be really thoughtful and precise about your diet." Vegan and vegetarian is not it's not a convenience diet.
Right.
I would say those are one of the hardest diets to do just because you actually have to prep your food.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
buying
recommend
buying
some amino
buying french
acid
fries.
blends for your vegans, vegetarians?
Um, I I often do just because it's very hard to get methionine, lysine, leucine, isoleucine, and
Yeah,
valine, which are all the branched chain amino acids, the most important
right.
ones for muscle protein synthesis and hair and
Yeah.
everything else. You can like I said, I was with a vegan this weekend and she is so thoughtful about her diet. And I'm like, yeah, but you're retired. I'm like, so many of the people that I meet, they're like still eating like Amy's vegan meals, which have like no protein in them. So I think that's super important. But on the flip side, you know what I hear, Julie, all the time is I'll have somebody come in and go, Betty, I'm getting all my protein. I make sure I get my 120 grams in every day. And I'm like, what's on the plate with it? And they're like, well, I make sure I'm getting my chicken. I'm like, no, 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 no. How much of the green and colorful stuff that grow above ground did you get on the other side? And they had like a couple leaves of lettuce and like a half of an avocado slice. I'm like, okay, also not helpful,
You
right? Also very much not helpful because we need fiber and all these other things. And I think that's a huge gap
Mhm.
because right now protein is really
It does.
popular. Like everybody's like, I gotta get my protein. And I've got a lot of podcasts about how that may be backfiring for people. But I think the other side is if you're doing that and blowing off the fiber and the phytonutrients and everything else, you're screwing yourself just the
I
same.
agree 100%. 100%.
Sorry, carnivores. I'm just being honest. And a carnivore will grow some nasty, nasty bacteria in your gut, because they starve all the good guys. I can tell you that. I spent 3 years researching microbiome and particularly in women. And I can tell you, you get some nasty buggers you do not want that grow.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, again, it goes back to we're we're living beings. And we're not meant to eat just all, grains or all vegetables or all protein. We have to have that balance. And I like to say
Yeah, we're
PFC,
omnivores.
protein, fats, complex carbohydrates, just because people make it so complicated. And it is, if you go out there and do Dr. Google or whatever, you can get really confused. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I always look for like, the way I look at the dietary things is I always look for the things that are common under most of the research dietary
right.
things, right? Yes, there are people conducting research on carnivore, but no humans have ever lived on that for their entire lives, and also vegan has not ever been done. Number 1, are there essential nutrients missing? Then it's not a human diet, like, that's lifetime. But when you look at where they converge, high fiber, whole foods, natural form, fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and then healthy fats, and then adequate protein pretty much covers the gamut. All right, so we hit number one. What would be your number two? Like if they're like, I got to do something really important, it's that I can feel that I have some agency right now. What would be number
Okay,
two?
so I would get the circulation to your scalp so you can get like these. This is really fun. It feels really good. But
Oh yeah, so it's one of those
yeah,
little.
it's like
So for
10
anybody
bucks
that's not
on
watching the video,
Amazon. You can go to my website.
yeah, it's one
Yeah,
of those
I
scalp
messed up my hair.
massagers that
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
tickles
but
that tickles your scalp, but that's
yeah, you can
huge.
do that in front of the TV, but also you need to get like on an inversion table. Just put your head over the back of your bed. You need that circulation to your scalp. Too many of us are just at our computer all day, and we need to get out
Mhm.
walking, but we also need like do a down dog, do something, get those nutrients up there. And it's also going to help with stress. And I mean,
Mhm.
it's a big thing. Oh, manage your stress. Well, that's a huge thing to I am not going to say that, but this can help get those nutrients circulating up there and help.
Could they do their own kind of
Oh
scalp
yeah,
massage
sure.
where they're using their fingers?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, imagine like you're washing
Right.
your hair, but you're
Right.
scrubbing
Right.
your
Right.
scalp.
Right.
Yeah. Just get stimulus to the
Yeah. And
scalp.
then another.
Yeah, it's funny, I wanna
Yeah.
say something about this because I saw an ad, and you'll love this, on Instagram, and they had some fancy serum and something else, and then they had this little massager that had, like, moving finger things, and then they're like, "Use this," and I'm like, "Why don't you just buy the moving massager and get rid of the crap they were trying to sell?" Because it was actually the stimulus to
Yeah.
the scalp that was doing it, and I was just like, "Oh, I hate it when people are like, creating subdiffusion
Yeah.
marketing to get you to buy a bunch of crap you don't
Yeah.
need."
Yeah. I mean, those microderm rollers, they can help too,
Yeah.
but you have to be careful because if you do it wrong, then it can be more harm than good. But
Yep.
they have a place. But again, it's getting that circulation to the scalp. And then something else, I would say the third one is get a silk pillowcase, not satin, silk, because it retains
So
like
okay.
43% of the moisture in your skin and your hair. And it also feels really good, but that goes back to the whole toxin conversation is, we need to pay attention to what's hitting our hair, not only externally but internally. Um,
Mhm.
and then going back to
I'm
yeah.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you said that about the silk pillowcases, because I've wondered about that. Because it definitely isn't as harmful on your hair, and especially doesn't make you don't wake up with a fro the next day because it's all over the place doing crazy stuff. A poorly designed fro. Let's call it that way. Some people have amazing fros. I would
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but those are just some things you can start right away. Um, and I have
Awesome.
some visual studies on my website just to back up the whole gut microbiome, hair microbiome importance. I mean, there's this before and after photos of this 11-year-old who had celiac disease and then went on a gluten-free diet for a
Mhm.
year. His hair all grew back. Um, Another before and after of someone who had H. pylori, got rid of it, hair grew
Mhm.
back. Um, oh, my favorite, I have a published abstract from a couple years ago, um, and it's the gut hair link, the gut hair axis per se. And I have this study on my abstract, and I talk about it a lot, and I think you'll really like this. Um, is the fecal microbial transplant. And now that's not something we do in our
Yeah.
practice, but it proves the point because um there were subjects that two of them had alopecia universalis. That's a
Yeah.
autoimmune hair loss. They were told they never grow their hair back. Two men, and a woman who had
Mhm.
colitis, and same, she had
Yep.
major hair loss. And I have before and after pictures too. And then my favorite was an 86-year-old man who had um like colon cancer and depression. He had this major bald spot. All of them grew back their hair. Again, it's just to
Yeah.
prove a point. You get your gut healthy, and not only did they grow back their hair, but they they overcame their other struggles, their other health struggles. So it's just so important to really manage and prioritize what you're putting in your mouth and chew and
Yes.
relax when you eat. I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah, slow down.
So simple.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so, so simple. Now you have a gift for my listeners, and it is your, it is a freebie guide that you just recently updated,
Hmm.
right? That's got updated information about hair loss, so they can actually get kind of a step-by-step roadmap for regrowing your
Hmm.
hair. And so, this is where you go through your 5 Rs and all of
Hmm.
that. I think that's awesome, and you got some recipes and things, which I think is amazing because that helps everybody.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that we put that in the show notes, so it's available to the, listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for women. It's focused for women and you know,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. So where else can my listeners find you? You've got some answers for them. They're feeling hair
yeah, and my
loss.
website you can find it julieolson.com and that's olson.com. And my social media handles are Julie Olson FN for functional nutritionist. So Julie Olson FN.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Julie, this has been a great conversation, and I'm hoping that everybody that listens feels like they got 2 or 3 things that they can implement to just start. And obviously, if they're still struggling, they can reach out to you and work with you because you work with people individually all the time,
Mhm.
right? Fantastic.
Well,
Well,
I
thank
also want
you.
to mention that Betty's one of her your first podcasts on hair loss. People should revisit that too. It's really, really good.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably 100 and some odd
Yeah.
episodes back. Yeah, I talk about my own personal hair
Yeah.
loss, but yeah, it is. It's unfortunately, particularly as women, men have their own, judgments by society, but women, hair loss is serious for women because we are judged by our
Right.
hair. And so I have a special heart for anybody that feels that because I know what it's like. And so, yeah, yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And everybody, thank you for listening to Menopause Mastery, and we'll be back with you next week. And if you enjoyed this episode and found it to be helpful, please share it with a friend because together we rise.